care about what really makes America a great and wonderful place. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. God bless you all.
Thank you, Congressman John Dingell and Senator Carl Levin. Give them one more round of applause. We thank you very much for that. At this time, we're going to call on our good friend and brother, President of AFSCME here in the city of Detroit, freedom fighter in his own right, brother who's always on the case, somebody that we all know. He's going to present the Freedom and Justice Award to another good brother from North Carolina. Let's welcome Brother Al Garrett. We also want you to know we got something very special for you. Something very special is going to happen in just a little while, so stay tuned. Al.
Good evening. I get to follow Reverend Anthony, always. But fortunately, I have an opportunity to present to you someone that sort of reminds you of the efforts of our own Reverend Anthony. You see, he is a pastor of the church for roughly 20 years. He's been fighting in the community for roughly 20 years. But his selection is of particular importance to the city of Detroit because he comes from a community not unlike the city of Detroit. That when you talk about battles, this brother's been in the battles. Now let's examine those battles. Number one, we talk about education in the city of Detroit. Are we in battle? Of course we are. This brother comes from North Carolina and has fought the fight to desegregate the schools in North Carolina. He did that. This brother has been in the battle with regards to releasing and fighting for innocent people to be released from prison. He did that. Do we have that battle in our community today? Of course we do. This brother has fought against the prison complex. Are we fighting that battle here today? Yes, we are. This brother has fought in terms of public housing, fair and decent housing. Do we have that problem here today? Sure we do. So as we walk through the many problems that we encounter in the city of Detroit, this brother's on the forefront fighting those same battles in North Carolina. And brothers and sisters, I say to you that he brings the same vitality, the same commitment that is demonstrated by our leader here in Detroit. So it's with great pleasure that I bring forward to you the Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II as an honoree for the Ida B. Wells Freedom and Justice Awards. Please put your hands together.
To all of you who have gathered in this place, it is good that a Southern boy could come north in Detroit, where you have had both the message, the music, and the movement. I thank God tonight for my friend Wendell Anthony, who is a champion among champions, and I count it a great honor to receive this award. Tonight, I receive it on behalf of all of the members of the North Carolina Conference of Branches of the NAACP. And many of you may have seen on YouTube or the news a movement called the Moral Monday Movement that's been spreading across the nation. I was talking to my friend Apostle John Harvey. 945 people have gone to jail challenging the immoral policies of our state legislature and governor. More than 80,000 people gathered in the dead of winter in February, the largest civil rights gathering since Selma, to challenge the immoral activities of our governor and our legislature. We understand what Howard Thurman said, the position of the disinherited in every age. What must be the attitude toward the rulers and the controllers of political, social, and economic life? You know, friends, as I close up these remarks, when you look at Tea Party extremism, you can encapsulate what they believe is the pathway to a greater America. And once you do it, you understand it's actually a pathway to destruction. Let me give you their platform quickly. They believe the way to a greater America is to deny economic development, deny health care to sick people, deny public education, deny living wages, deny labor rights, deny immigrant rights, deny women rights, deny LGBT rights, deny fair tax policy, deny affirmative action to college students, to deny voting rights. And if you really want a great society, on top of that, give more tax cuts to the greedy and take public money and give it to private schools. And if you really want to be a great society, after you've done all of that, give people more guns. We have to declare that that is morally indefensible, constitutionally inconsistent, and morally insane. We need a movement of moral dissent, Dr. Wendell, Anthony, where somebody stands up and says, it doesn't matter what party is in power, what party has political supermajority. There are some things that are not left versus right, or red versus blue, or liberal versus conservative. There are some things that must be challenged just because they are wrong, and they lead us down the path of destruction. And what we need is a way to higher ground, where every child is educated, higher ground where the sick are cared for, higher ground where workers are paid for, higher ground where we take care of everybody and respect everybody. So I took a moment to leave North Carolina to come here to say, down in the Southland, we're headed toward higher ground, and we thank you for your support up here in the North Carolina and in the northern part of this country. We must take this nation back to higher ground, and the only way to do it is fight like we have never fought before.
Here to present our next award is Mr. Don White, President of the Michigan State Conference of the NAACP, to the workers. Scriptures say the laborers are worthy of their hire. She's going to present to D15.
Good evening, Detroit. This year's recipient of the Mary Church Terrell Freedom and Justice Award is being presented to a group that represents the Detroit's fast food and retail workers, who have come together to form the D15 campaign to fight for their wages and the right to form a union without interference. They represent workers for more than 50 employers, food and retail alike, who are making a tremendous profit, but do not pay their employees enough to support their families and to cover their basic needs like food, health care, housing, and transportation. There are now more than 50,000 fast food jobs in the Detroit metropolitan area. That's more than twice as any in the automotive industry. Fast food jobs are projected to grow by 12% in our area by 2018. That's more than twice as fast as the projected growth of the regional workforce as a whole. But these jobs are the lowest paying jobs in metropolitan Detroit, and many of our workers are earning Michigan's minimum wage of $7.40 or just above. We're not talking about small business owners. These are billion-dollar companies that can afford to pay their employees better. When workers join together and are paid a living wage, not only will it strengthen the economy, but it will also reduce crime in our neighborhoods. Tonight's honorees and the NAACP have been fighting back towards actions and protests all across the nation. Wage theft has become a hot-button issue, and we have to keep the pressure on these perpetrators. We cannot afford to have our poverty-level wages taken by multi-billion corporations. We need to increase the minimum wage and allow employees to choose and form a union. I don't know about you, but I'm all in for justice and equality, and you should be as well. This year's 2004 Mary Church Terrell Freedom and Justice Award is being presented to the Detroit 15 with Chris Gary as the lead organizer and Mr. Ricardo Jackson, one of our retail workers. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you. I am definitely honored to be getting this award. As they say, I'm the lead organizer, I'm Chris Gary, but the real heroes are the fast food workers, you know, who get out every day with fear of retaliation, losing their jobs. They get out and they try to make their voices heard. The only thing that the organizers are doing is providing a platform for them to tell their story. And I think all of them have just one simple thing. They just want dignity and respect. And they want to be paid with dignity and respect. You know, Martin Luther King fought for not only social justice, but economic justice. So these people are no different. They want economic justice. They want $15 and the right to form a union. They just want to basically make a living wage. So I want to proudly introduce a fast food worker who is with me. He is courageous, he has become my friend, and he's a courageous fighter in the fight for this $15 in the union. Ricardo Jackson.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of D15, all fast food workers and retail workers across the country and in the state, we just want to say thank you for receiving this award on tonight. It's very distinguished. It encouraged to let us know that we're doing our job to make an impact upon people, upon their minds, upon their businesses, to let the world know that we're not taking it anymore. And we just want to say thank you. We give acknowledgement to God, we give acknowledgement to NAACP, all the tiers of leadership, and all you distinguished guests that are here tonight. We just want to say thank you. The days of the rich and the poor, becoming more richer and becoming more poor, are coming to an end. If we continue to stand together and be an impact, a source, forcing to bring a change upon our community, upon our city, and upon our state, most importantly upon our country, and eventually the world. Thank you.
Let's give D15 another round of applause. I don't know about you, but I won't mind, Mr. Mayor, paying another $1 for a hamburger if that means my brothers and sisters get a fair pay for a fair day's work. Anybody else with me? Is anybody else with me? All right. It is now my pleasure to introduce the 2014 Great Expectations Awardee. The Detroit branch in ACP has bestowed this inimitable award to many in the past with great expectations for what is yet to come. However, today this award goes to someone we have come to expect greatness from. By definition of Webster, expectation says a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. Synonyms like supposition, assumption, presumption, conjecture, surmise, calculation, prediction, and hope. Today, we do not just suppose, assume, presume, conject, surmise, calculate, predict, or hope, but we know our awardee not by the talk, but by the walk, not by the smarts, but by the heart. Our awardee, known as an idealpreneur, has ascended to the office of President and CEO of the Skillman Foundation. She has served as the chief architect of the 10-year, $100 million Good Neighborhoods program, named Crane's Detroit Business 40 Under 40, and a Marshall Memorial Fellow. But more than her many degrees, she continues a rich legacy of strong sisters on the front lines. Oh, when you think of the name of those like Dorothy Height, when you think of the name of those like Rosa Parks, when you think of the name of those like Fannie Lou Hamer, Madam C.J. Walker, Maxine Waters, oh, from this day forward, one must not leave out the name of Mrs. Tanya Allen. Today, Tanya, we honor you, not only for what we expect, but for that you will do on behalf of our children, education, and the Detroit community. But we honor you for what you have done to continue the rich legacy of speaking truth to power and being a drum major for justice. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our 2014 Great Expectation Awardee, Mrs. Tanya Allen.
So first, I'd like to thank Donnell for that beautiful introduction and thank Reverend Anthony for this acknowledgement of my work. I also want to congratulate the NAACCP for this dinner because Detroit always turns out, and I want to thank you all for the support of this important organization. I'm really proud to be here tonight, not because of my own work, but because of the work of the countless other people who work on behalf of Detroit's children, including my colleagues at the Skillman Foundation. So when I was announced that I was getting this award, I told my husband that I was getting it, and he said, "Why would you get it? You're old." I am 41, and I do nearly have 20 years of service under my belt. But I also know that I have many years of work before me. The second thing I thought was my mother always said, "Define for yourself so no one else will define it for you." And so I believe that the Great Expectations Award is about these things. You can expect this of me. I will always do what's right. Honesty, integrity, and authenticity. I will be insatiable, urgent, and passionate on behalf of our city. I will, when I get the opportunity, kick down doors, and I'm bringing you with me. And I will always do what's right for children. I will do it on behalf of my children, Felicia, Brianna, and Alana, but I also will do it on behalf of Ron Norwood, who did not learn to read until he was in the 6th grade. But I'm proud to say that he just graduated from Jackson State this year. Or I'm gonna do it for Elizabeth Morales, who is one of the most brilliant minds I've ever met. But some kind of way in her school, they told her she wasn't smart enough. And I'm gonna do it for the boys in this city who experience expulsion from school, suspensions from school, as high as 50%. Did you hear me? 50%. And our girls too. Nearly 18% of all the kids in the city of Detroit have been suspended from school. And only 18% of 1% have ever experienced in-school suspension. We have to make a change, and I'm willing to put my name on the line that we will do it. Thank you.
Congratulations, Tanya Allen. As I said, we are right on time. We want, if you're in the aisles, please take your seats and move out of the aisles if you would. How many of you know we had a rough winter in Michigan? Raise your hand. How many of you got busted tires this winter? Raise your hand. How many of you had accidents? Raise your hand because of the snow. How many of you felt depressed, like winter was never gonna end? Raise your hand. Some of us were just down. We were despairing. We were not feeling good. Our spirits were low. We couldn't be as joyful as we wanted to be. Well, tonight, we just want to make everybody feel happy. Thanks. Let's give our children a hand. Thanks for the happiness. I want to thank the Detroit Public Schools for the students that are here, as well as schools around the region. I want to thank Ford Motor Company for assisting us with this. I want to thank Summer Golden and Maya Reynolds for helping to put this together, and all the parental volunteers. Give them a hand for bringing these children down here. Our future is in good hands. Don't you feel happy in there? All right, even the mayor was happy. And I think they got that on film, so you can't deny it. Lord have mercy, Jesus. We are right on schedule. We're right on schedule. And now to the moment to crystallize our occasion. After that energizing moment, we get ready to get happier by transferring the spirit of our bodies into the discipline of our minds. As one who appreciates history, I am inspired always by the likes of Thurgood Marshall and his co-laborer in the struggle for justice, Charles Hamilton Houston. They were lawyers who set the standard for those who believe in freedom and justice and fairness. On the Charles Hamilton Houston Memorial, one of the quotes that immortalizes Houston following his work in the war as a veteran was this one. I made up my mind that I never get caught again without knowing my rights, that if luck was with me and I got through this war, I would study law and use my fighting for men who could not fight back. Our speaker, like his mentor and conscientious inspiration, speaks more often than not for men and women who cannot fight back for themselves. He speaks from high places to the depths of low conditions. He is a graduate of Stanford University, earning BA and MA with distinction in political science. Further, he received his JD from Harvard University Law School. Professor Ogletree holds many degrees that he has earned by his specific work, and others have been bestowed upon him as a result of the admiration and inspiration for his work. Yet that alone is not why he is here. He is the author of several books on race and justice, among them Life Without Parole, America's New Death Penalty, The Presumption of Guilt, The Arrest of Henry Louis Gates Jr., and Race, Class, and Crime in America. His historical memoirs, All Deliberate Speed, Reflection on the First Half Century of Brown versus the Board of Education, published in 2004, surfaces again as we are now 60 years from Brown versus the Board of Education, and the Supreme Court, by its recent decision on Michigan, has seemingly turned educational opportunities around. It is because Charles Ogletree understands, like Charles Hamilton Houston, who said, I'd like for all the lawyers and the judges who are here tonight to please stand. If you're a lawyer or a judge, please stand. If you're in school to become a lawyer or a judge, please stand. Please remain standing. All lawyers, judges, and those who would be judges, this is for you. It is because Charles Hamilton Houston, his mentor, said this, that a lawyer is either a social engineer or he is a parasite on society. As a social engineer, his duties must include being the mouthpiece of the weak and a sentinel guarding against wrong, guiding against antagonists and group forces into channels where they will not clash, and ensure that the course of change is orderly with the minimum of human suffering. A social engineer was a highly perceptive, sensitive lawyer who understood the Constitution of the United States and knew how to explain its uses in the solving of problems of local communities and in bettering conditions of the underprivileged. Detroit, this is why Charles Ogletree is here. Let's welcome a social engineer, a people's lawyer, a constitutional expert, the president's personal advisor, a consultant to the Department of Justice on civil rights, the poor people's advocate, the conscience for the imprisoned, an interpreter for the intellectuals, a translator for the culture of the streets, still maintaining the common touch, our defender, our brother, our friend, Dr. Charles Ogletree of Harvard University, known to many as simply Shree.
Wow. Thank you so much, Reverend Anthony. Boy, am I happy today. I'm happy because, did you see not only this wonderful song, but young people from Detroit, from public schools, being happy being in school in the year 2014. It's time for all of us to celebrate our future, these young African-American boys and girls who made it happen for us. I want to start with the scripture, and I'm going to end with the scripture. This is from Hebrews 11, the first verse. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's what we're experiencing today. We're not there yet, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there because we have the leadership of people who have spent their entire lives dedicated to struggle and sacrifice. And none is better anywhere in the world than this great event hosted by none other than Reverend Wendell Anthony. He should get a standing ovation for what he's done, not just in Detroit, but around the world by standing up for us, making our voices be heard, and making sure that people understand that we are not finished yet. We're just getting started. I'm so deeply honored to be speaking today at the annual gala sponsored by the Detroit NAACP chapter. This city has a great history of struggle and sacrifice. Whether it's the world champion basketball team that kicked a butt out of the Boston Celtics over and over again, whether it's hockey, football, golf, any other sports, Detroit is a great city. It has done so much for so many people and so many times. And also, you have to think about a real sport who is a champion in this state, and that's the man who's been serving this city since 1966, none other than my friend, my mentor, my buddy, the Representative John Conyers. I've known Congressman Conyers for many years and watched him when he didn't even know that I was watching him. I remember when they passed the 1988 Civil Rights Law, and I want to give a little lesson here. How many people are over 40 years old? I'm not trying to, I'm way over 40. Just stand. How many people are over 40? A lot of this is for people who are under 40 who have no sense of this history. I remember the 1988 Civil Liberties Act, where our country recognized that Japanese Americans had been wrongfully placed in internment camps throughout the West and other places, including in my hometown, Merced, California. I didn't learn of this about them being in Merced at the fairgrounds until 2 years ago. The person who was paying attention in 1988 was John Conyers about the idea that we were going to give reparations, as they deserved it, to all living Japanese citizens of $20,000. It didn't take Congressman Conyers very long to then introduce what has been the bill that he has been introducing every single year since January 1989. It's called H.R. 40. And we got to thank Congressman Conyers for that. H.R. 40 is about this very clearly. 40 acres and a mule. Now, I want people to put their hands up if they got their 40 acres and a mule. I'm still looking. I don't see it anywhere. But you know what? He struck a chord in people like me and Randall Robinson, my mentor and my friend. And we have taken up what he started in 1989, and we've been pushing for reparations ever since 1989. And I want to thank Randall Robinson, who wrote a terrific book called The Debt, D-E-B-T, What America Owes to Blacks. That book is a bestseller, but it also recalls how serious this movement is and how important it is to talk about reparations. And I think again about this wonderful scripture, the 11th chapter of the book of Numbers, the first verse, which says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, but evidence of things not seen." We haven't seen reparations yet, but I guarantee you, if you wait and if you're committed and if you're dedicated and you're willing to fight for it, all of us will receive reparations for making this country what it is, a great country built by the hands of former slaves, built by the hands of those who dealt with Jim Crow segregation, built by my grandfathers, my grandmother, my grandparents, all the people, my father, my mother, people who sacrificed from Alabama, from Arkansas, from all around the world. They made it possible for a kid like me to one day be speaking at this 59th convention of the Detroit chapter of the NAACP, and I'm honored to do it. I'm honored because my grandfather first opened the door. He didn't write any books. He's not known as a statesman. He didn't get a formal education, but he was a smart man. And I don't know how many people in this room recognize it. How many people have heard of the term an outhouse? All right. I know a whole lot of people don't know what an outhouse is. I do, because my grandfather made sure that we had an outhouse in Merced because we couldn't have a bathroom in the house. We didn't have a refrigerator. You put ice in the refrigerator. You cook logs to cook your food. And I learned a lot from him. I remember going fishing with my grandfather, and he was a very serious man for fishing. And he wasn't fishing for recreation or for fun. He was fishing for food, to make sure that his family had something to eat at the end of that day. And I think that's very important. And I remember the first time going out to the outhouse. I know nobody wants to tell this story, but the outhouse had all these 3 holes in a wooden place where you go outside and use the bathroom. I'm bending over, trying to use the toilet. I almost fell in. There would have been no Charles Ogletree, but I was saved. And I'm looking down there, all kinds of disease and everything else, but that was the first thing I knew, that God was looking out for me. Very important to understand that. As we think about this, we also have to think about where we are in the year 2014. And you've heard this before. We are not post-racial. We've got a long way to go before that happens. I know we have a black president, my former student. We also have a black attorney general. We have women in Congress. We have people in business like my good friend, Ken Chenault of American Express. We have done an incredible amount in so many different ways, but we are not post-racial yet. And I know I'm not alone, because I've been on the streets of Chicago, of New York, of Washington, D.C., with my best suit, with my Colin Powell book, trying to hold down a taxi cab just to pick me up. It didn't happen. You know what? I had everything there, but I didn't have the right color for them to stop. And you know what? The idea of this NAACP is a clear gift. What did I have that made a difference? There were white women and white men who would stop a cab, hold the door open, let me get in, and then be driven to the airport. Thank you for looking out for me to make sure that I'm treated like I should be, like a citizen of the United States of America. I also want to say a little word about this great event. What's amazing is that people forget about the work and the struggle and the death threats of Dr. Martin Luther King. He was not a politician. He was not a legislator. He did not represent anybody except the cause of justice. He was a preacher. But if you think about how much success we have had in the legal academy, it is because of the work done in 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s, and 1960s by none other than the late Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And he should always be a symbol of what we have done. We have a national holiday for him now in January, which is wonderful. We need to have another national holiday because there's another person who is a lawyer, who was a terrorist in some minds, who was a patriot in the other minds, who was involved in the struggle, who was part of a majority of people who were of African descent, and he was the first democratically elected president from the Republic of South Africa. And we should have a national holiday in the name of Nelson Mandela, our father, our brother, our friend, our leader. And we must do that. I also want to say this. If you think about what Dr. King did, it is just incredible. The 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act, the 68 Public Accommodations Act. Every time you would see Martin Luther King, the preacher, at the White House with President John Kennedy and then President Lyndon Baines Johnson as the legislation was signed. We would not be where we are today if not for his great sacrifice. On the other hand, we also have to understand the great work of a number of women who have made this world what it is. And we have to make sure that the next generation of young people understand these women. They need to know about Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer, who talked about, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. They need to talk about Rosa Parks and her many years here in Detroit, but before Detroit, she was leading the busing boycott in 1955. They have to talk about Emmett Till, who left the wonderful city of Chicago, went down to Jackson, Mississippi, and was killed, beaten to death by white racists, all as the result of whistling at a white woman. Think about what that means and what it means. And think about the great work of Medgar Evers, a great NAACP leader, a man who fought for justice, who died too soon. My friend Dennis Sweet's family lived right next door to him in Jackson, Mississippi. And it's amazing to see that he has fallen, and they've named in Mississippi the airport after him to recognize his contributions to the city of Jackson, Mississippi. As well, his wife has been the NAACP president, done a great job, and has lived his legacy into the 21st century. All those are important things to remember. And we also have to remember a man who is responsible for me. I met him. The man responsible for me, and that's Charles Hamilton Houston. And I want to just make it clear who he was. Houston was a black man born in the city of Washington, D.C. He went to the M Street High School before there was a Dunbar High School. My next book is going to be interviewing and videotaping the women and the men who were 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s, and 1950s, and 1960s graduate at Dunbar High School, because they are the future and they've already sacrificed to make us who we are today. This also, people should think about the fact, all these great women, and there is one among us that has to be recognized as well. You won't see her running for office, you won't see her on any poster, but she is a natural leader. And she has been a wonderful partner to President Barack Obama. And I think, I'm just saying, it's up to the people to decide who should be the President of the United States. But at some point, I have been told everywhere I go that Michelle Robinson Obama should be the first African-American woman ever elected a president of the United States of America. Are you with me? I think that's very important. I think it's also significant that this event of the NAACP is on a Sunday as well. There's a lot of criticism of mixing education and religion. I think they're naturally together. And I say something about this, as much as I wonder whether my students have a spiritual connection. My fears are answered every single year at exam time. I learned that my students are praying to God, saying, "Dear God, please forgive me for not reading the 3 chapters of the book that Professor Ogletree assigned. Please forgive me for not doing my homework. Please forgive me for missing a class. If you just bless me this one time, I promise you that tomorrow I'm going to be a wholly devoted student." I'm not sure God is doing anything but laughing, but the students are all passing. I want to say this. Let me say a few words about this city. With champions in so many different sports and so many people who have been lifting this city up, you wonder what is happening to Detroit. Unemployment, the lack of housing, the lack of jobs, racial profiling. I just bought the Sunday newspaper today, and what did the Sunday newspaper cover? A beating of an African-American man by 4 or 5 African-American and Latino boys, and they were stopped by another African-American. That tells you that why is public safety and encounters with the police on the front page of our papers? Wouldn't we like to hear something like the NAACP is supported by 2 incredible corporations here? 3 now, right? Shouldn't that be news? Wouldn't we like to talk about the fact that more kids are graduating from high school in the 21st century than ever before? Wouldn't that be great news? They can't graduate if the schools won't teach them, and the teachers can't teach them if they have too many kids who are having problems getting to school, who didn't have a meal before they came to school, or who have to go through a zone walking through gang members where they may be assaulted, beaten, or killed going to school. People aren't refusing to go to school just because they don't want to go. They're refusing to go to school because it's a threat to their very safety. We have to change that. If it's okay for Jack to go to school every day in the suburbs, it has to be okay for Jamal to go to school every single day in the hood. We have to make sure that happens. I'm reminded of words by the Apostle Paul at the time of his life of battles. He told us in the Holy Bible, in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7, he said, I have fought the good fight, I have finished my course, and I have kept the faith. This was an apostle who had lived his life but was still trying to make sure that his work was not in vain. And I think that's very important. I remember learning things by just sitting next to people who were important, like my grandfather. No education, but a lot of sense. I remember going out to the creek and fishing with him, and he would always say, Junior, they call me, go way down there, don't sit in my area. Junior, don't put your worm on or your dobro on the bait. Go down there and fish what you're going to do. He wanted to make sure that I had the skill to do it myself. My grandmother taught me the same thing. Many of you remember rice pudding. My grandmother taught me how to cook rice pudding. She was crippled. She had a stroke when she was a young woman, and she was had a crutch. But she would say, Junior, put this in, put that in, put etc. in, and I became a great preparer of this wonderful dessert that she made. But she was not teaching me how to make rice pudding. She was teaching me how to be a man and ultimately a father and hopefully a parent, to be responsible for my children, for my grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren, and anybody who came, to make sure that they too will have the opportunity that I had. And I have to say this, that going to Stanford and graduating in 3 years, going to Harvard and being the president of the National Black Law Students Association, those things are great, but they're only because somebody somewhere was looking out for me as a child. I had a bad habit. What would I do? Every single day after school, I would go to the public library, which doesn't exist in many communities, and I would check out as many books as I could. Why? I would read those books and understand where people are traveling, and I could imagine. When that train would go through Merced, I was imagining I was on that train. I was everybody possible because I read about them in these books. And I almost got busted one time, and I know some of you have been in that situation. I was reading in the dark one of the books from the library, and my mother and grandmother came into the room and said, Charles, you can't read in the dark. Put that book down and go to bed. And I did put the book down, and they left. And then I picked the book back up, kept the light on, because I'd read enough books to know you can't get blind from reading in the dark. I didn't tell them that, but that was clearly something that made a big difference in my life as well. When I graduated from Stanford, I graduated with honors. I graduated in 3 years, and though the normal bachelor's degree is a 4-year expenditure, because I was being smart. I thought I was being smart. graduated Phi Beta Kappa, and I know people here graduated Phi Beta Kappa, and a whole different issues. People graduated with honors, and those summa cum laude, magna cum laude, and all these different, or just cum laude. And some of us graduate just saying, thank you, Lord. Whatever you got to say, whatever you got to do, just get out, and that has to be the challenge for the 21st century. As I think about what made me who I am, it is every place that I went, people lifted up me with a hand up, not a hand out. The whole idea was to make sure that this kid from Merced who could read could also go to college. The first person in my family to go to college, and the first person in my family to graduate with honors. But you know what's great? I had 3 brothers, and some of you have experienced this. When I was leaving in my 1963 Dodge Dart, a nice car, leaving, going to Stanford, I got 2 flat tires, and I came back, and I was only gone for 10 minutes to try to fix the tires. I went in the house, and there were 4 of us living in this bedroom. My brothers had already taken my bed out of the room in 15 minutes, make sure that I wasn't coming back. I said, wait a minute, this is not fair. Why are you taking my bed? They said this, and I remember it today, because we know you are the first going to college. Open the door and leave it open for us. And that's what I did. My 3 brothers are all graduates of the military. They all are veterans. They've served our country. They did it very well. They were remarkable individuals. And when I was in college, I got my number for the draft. And I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, the number was 272. Boy, I was glad when they didn't take anybody with a number higher than 20. I celebrated that over and over and over again. I have to say, too, that it was very important that mentors were important people to me, because they made sure that there were things that I never saw, never had, and never took. These true mentors never showed me, never gave me drugs, they never gave me guns, and they never gave me any trouble. They said, you have